Dacia advise oil changes are done every 12,000 miles or 12 months. Step 1. Warm up that engine. Now that the engine is hot and the oil nicely thinned and runny, we can take the car into the garage for the oil change. Take your time on this bit, as although we needed the engine oil thinned, it's going to be dangerously hot at over 80 degrees, so let things cool for a few minutes. Other than a trolley jack and axle stands, you'll need the following for the Dacia Sandero: a 10mm socket to remove the undertray, at least 4 litres of engine oil, I used 5W30, new oil filter and new copper washer, a filter remover tool of which there are many, 8mm square drive and breaker bar, torque wrench at 20 Nm for the sump plug, gloves, and oil recovery tray. This is the 10mm socket for the undertray bolts. I used fully synthetic 5W30 motor oil. There are many oil filters, I just happen to use a Bosch on this occasion. This is a Bosch P4025. There are many oil filter removal tools. This is the cup type. This one was actually 64mm, though I think it should have been 66 on that particular filter. You've also got the clamp type oil filters, such as this one, which locks on. You have the strap ones. They tend to slip a bit, so they're a bit hard to get a real purchase onto the oil filter. And my favourite, the Fake-On. They're quite expensive, but they definitely lock on. Then we need an 8mm square drive on a breaker bar for that sump plug. This one nicely fits into a socket as such. A ratchet for the oil filter tools. And the all important torque wrench to make sure we tighten the sump plug up to the correct setting. And some gloves, because used motor oil can be carcinogenic. And not forgetting an oil collection container. Now to jack the Dacia Sandero up. I place the head of the jack under the seal just behind the front wheels. I have found the rubber ice hockey pucks ideal for this, as they last years and won't mark the paintwork. If using 2 jacks like I am here, it makes sense to jack up each side a little bit at a time so the car's not too leaned over. Never go under a car without making safe with axle stands rated to handle the load. I tend to leave the jacks in place as well, so in effect I have 4 items protecting me. Using a 10mm socket, undo the 8 bolts securing the undertray. Here's the undertray, and I've coloured the bolts yellow, and this needs removing first. And here's the tray removed. Now to drain the oil in the sump using an 8mm square drive. Make sure to have that oil recovery pan ready and be careful not to drop the plug and washer into the oil. Here's the sump plug, and the 8mm square drive fits in nicely. What I tend to do is loosen the sump first with the breaker bar, then get the container ready and undo with my fingers. I try and push onto the sump plug at the same time to allow it until the thread actually ends, and then hopefully I can just put it away in one go. That's the theory. So while I'm unscrewing, I'm actually pushing it upwards until I can feel the thread come to the end, and then hopefully I just put it away. Like so. While this is draining, you can go and have a cup of tea. Then to replace the sump plug, and always use a new copper washer. Replace the drain plug into the sump and use a new copper washer. Then using a torque wrench, tighten the plug to the recommended setting. I torque to 20 Nm, but best check with the Dacia service department. Then to tighten with a torque wrench, in this case to 20 Nm. Then remove the old oil filter. Its location isn't the easiest, so you may find it quite a messy job. Be prepared with some old rags. The oil filter location on the Dacia is a bit more of a challenge. It's tucked up underneath a subframe member, so it's certainly not the easiest to get to. I think if you're going to do this on a regular basis, you may want to make some sort of funnel just to stop all the oil pouring all over the chassis, as it's just about to do now. It really is quite awkward to get in there, especially if you're trying to keep it clear for a camera to view. This is definitely a very messy job on the Dacia Sandero. I think it's the same for the Renault Clio as well, as I recall. When you remove the old filter, make sure that the old seal is still present on it. You don't want it to be still stuck in position and you end up double gasketing it. Can I hear Sam, the delivery girl? That was a part I needed for the Honda CR-V. I guess this part of the car will never rust. It should last forever. Here is a wide-angle view of where the oil filter mounts. I never think it's a bad idea to measure how much oil actually came out of the car, just to make sure you don't overfill it, and also see how much oil had been used. She was down by 3/4 of a litre, so she must be burning some oil. She's done about 100,000 miles. Replace the oil filter with a new one, wipe the seal with some new oil and tighten to only just touching. Then a further 3/4 of a turn by hand only. So in theory no tools are required to fit the filter, and tools shouldn't be used. It is a case of putting it on until it's just finger tight and then rotating by another 3/4 of a turn, in theory. This turned out to be a lot harder than I thought, given the position of the filter. Also, don't forget, you must put a smear of oil onto the oil filter seal. It certainly does seem an awkward position, though in fairness, I suppose I needed to be where the camera was. I've put a line onto the oil filter for the purpose of this video to help show where the 3/4 of a turn would be. It needs to go around till 12 o'clock. I really do need to be where that camera is sitting. I've only got it to about half a turn so far. Okay, the camera's just going to have to move for me to get this on tight enough. From this position you can actually tighten it up okay. Nearly managed to get it to 3/4 of a turn. It's just a little bit short. It's about 11 o'clock. Then replace the undertray using the 10mm socket and the 8 bolts. Time for the fresh oil now. I use 4 litres of fully synthetic 5W30, but there is a choice dependent on your climate, so check with your manual. Really essential to pre-measure the oil, but if you do so, then at least you know you're not going to overfill the engine and then have to remove some at a later date. In theory, if you put the oil on its side, it shouldn't glug 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 so much. Four litres. Seems quite a lot for a little 1.2. It's definitely advisable to use a funnel when refilling the oil, though you may wish to go a bit slower than I did, because I still managed to fill up the overflow area, as you can see now. There it goes. Should be fun cleaning that up. Now to start the engine so the new oil filter fills with oil. This is important if we are to check the dipstick and get an accurate reading. God, didn't think she was going to start then. Seems to be revving all over the place. Oh, she's settled down now. After waiting 10 minutes for the oil to drain back into the sump, we can confirm using the dipstick that we haven't under or overfilled the engine. Always remove the dipstick first, wipe it clean, and then reinsert and quickly pull out to take an accurate reading. I then like to take a mileometer reading for the vehicle's service history. Thank you for watching and hope this was of interest to other home mechanics.